everybody. Welcome to the solo edition of Spring Fever with me, XFL Jim. Uncle Rico, the man, the myth, the legend, is out celebrating his birthday. So let's give a round of applause to Uncle Rico. Making it another year. It's getting harder every year, folks. Trust me. But we have a lot to talk about in today's show. But before I get into any of that, Spring Fever is brought to you by the one, the only Royal Retros, your one-stop shop for all clothing involving teams that exist sometimes only in our hearts, sometimes only in our souls, but they exist over at royalretros.com, and they exist even more if you use promo code SPRINGFEVER, all one word, for 10% off at checkout. Now, on today's show, we are going to be talking more vibes regarding the XFL USFL mergers. We are going to be talking CFL playoff scenarios and give a solemn farewell to two of the teams that have been eliminated. I'll leave that up to you for now to figure out which two. And then, of course, we're going to be going over last week of CFL action, making our picks for this coming weekend of CFL play, and going over last weekend's X-League sauciness. So for the XFL USFL merger talk, there seems to be a sort of lull, a sort of calm before the storm, so to speak. They're kind of in a waiting period at the moment. It looks as if we're going to have information come out, I would expect mid to late November, which does worry me a little bit on the basis of if they're trying to get going by 2024, is really having everything together in November, does that give you enough time? Does that give you enough time? I'm of the mind that I believe the XFL and USFL are both going to be playing out their individual seasons this next year. I don't think that they're going to try and haul the whole thing together in 2024. I don't. I truly do not think that's going to happen. I also have heard tell through the grapevine, through some rumors, that it looks like there is a plan in place potentially for the new league to try and sell franchise spots, which I believe is a good move. I think that's something that needs to happen in order to help the longevity of spring football. I'm excited for that move. I want to see it happen, and hit me up. Hit me up. I'll pool some money together, and I'll see if I can get me a franchise spot. I would put a team. I don't know where I'd put it. What franchise would I go for? That's a good question, is what franchise would Jim go for? And what franchise would XFL Jim go for, and what franchise would USFL Jim go for to buy? It might be split. I might have to get two franchises to compensate for both gyms. Think about that. But we're really just in a lull right now. The merger seems to be going through. I'm still seeing some stuff on NSFL, National Spring Football League. I'm whatever on that. I am just excited. I know we're just waiting. And I know it's frustrating. But a lot of all this spring football talk with the USFL and XFL have involved just sitting around and waiting. And that's what we got to do more of. But let's get into the CFL. First off, we have playoff scenarios to discuss. Before I do any of that, a big salute and a farewell to our Edmonton Elks. That'll start us off with our first game recap of the CFL Week 18. Toronto Argonauts 35, Edmonton Elks 12. The Elks couldn't do it. They just couldn't do it. They tried. The Argos were too good. Chad Kelly did play a little bit. We saw a little Cameron Dukes, but Chad Kelly was like the main guy. Edmonton just couldn't make it happen. Trey Ford goes down swinging. And the boys. It's a disappointing season for the Elks. It's a sad season. They seem to have hope there kind of near the end. And this seems to be the Elks' MO, at least for the last couple of years. An extremely disappointing start. They sprinkle a glimmer of hope for you. But it's never enough. The damn Elks. The goddamn Elks. Game number 2 last week. We had the Bombers taking on the Lions. Basically to decide who's probably going to get first place in the West. And Winnipeg wins this one 34-26. Banger game. Banger game if you guys didn't catch it. This was awesome. Yes, Buckshot Kid in the chat. Ford did have a great touchdown at the end of the half. There's hope. I believe Trey Ford is the future for Edmonton. I believe. The Bombers with this victory kind of have, I believe, cemented themselves in the West. I think they're in a very good spot. Obviously, these teams are going to have to play each other. I believe this is going to be your Western Finals matchup, no matter what scenario. It does kind of suck if BC can't end up getting a home field advantage because we've seen throughout the year that they're much better at home. So this game did have a lot of ramifications. So, of course, it went Winnipeg's way because that seems to always happen. Game number 3, Ticats 38, Rough Riders 13. This just continues the stretch that I've said week in and week out. I feel like I'm a broken record with this, that the Rough Riders just, ever since I declared this team could be sneaky, this team could be chaos, this team could maybe make some noise in the playoffs, they have just sunk to the bottom pits of just awfulness. This team stinks. This team absolutely stinks. Schiltz looked good. Bo Levi Mitchell even got a little play. I wonder if they just try and work him in spurts to make sure he's healthy. I'd still roll with Schiltz. I've loved Schiltz for a while in Hamilton. Loved him when they had him last year. I like him this year. I'm always going to be a Schiltz fan. So for Saskatchewan, I don't know. I'd probably chalk this season, honestly, into the burner. They still have a shot to make the playoffs. It's basically between them and Calgary, which I'll get to regarding this week. It's a very big game for them. But I just have zero faith in this Rough Riders team. Last game, Red Blacks 3, Alouettes 29. Not too much to say with this one other than the fact that, yes, guess what? When Montreal plays bad teams, they win, and they usually do it pretty convincingly. It just happens. There's no rhyme or reason to it. This team is your benchmark, where if you lose to them, you are a straight-up bad team. Both quarterbacks for the Red Blacks not reaching 100 yards passing. I don't know what the Red Blacks are going to do for next year for quarterback. You can't stick with this. And honestly, at this point, for his own health and safety and well-being, I don't know if Masoli comes back. And I don't know if you can really rely on him with how injury-prone he's shown to be. It's a shame because he's very entertaining and very fun to watch and a great guy. Love Jeremiah Masoli, but it just seems like it's not going to work out. It's a damn shame. Goddamn shame. Now, before I get into the picks, let's talk a little playoff scenario right now. So for the West, if Saskatchewan wins, they're in. They secure their spot. Winning, you're in. All the pressure on the Rough Riders right now. You need this win. You really, really, really need it. If BC loses, if the Lions lose, the Bombers claim first place in the division. And they'll host the Western Finals. I believe, what is this? The third, fourth year in a row almost? This team has just been insane. For the East, if Montreal wins or Hamilton loses, Montreal will host the semifinal game for the East. Buckshot Kid. Except for the Argos, I would not want that home game in the playoffs. Both Montreal and Hamilton have a winning record on the road than at home. That's a good point. That's a very good point. I still think if you're Hamilton, at least, you, like, in theory, you want the home crowd advantage because that home crowd should be good for you. But you're right. They have way better road records than they do at home, which is bizarre. Very bizarre. And also, just anyone who, just for those of you listening or watching, if Calgary wins, they're tied. So then it kind of just plays into the next couple weeks where if one loses and one wins, it kind of plays itself out. But if the Rough Riders win, if Saskatchewan wins, they are in. So let's get to the picks. Of all the books I'm picking, I'm using BetOnline like we normally do. Do not have a game don't have a line set for the Toronto game like usual. They seem to love not putting out the Toronto lines at all or not until right before the game happens. So I have 3 games to go for. We start with BC at Hamilton. BC laying 3.5 on the road, over under 48.5, plus 160 on the money line for the Ticats. This game is all pressure on the Lions. And this is a big pressure game for both teams. So we kind of see two things coming together here. BC usually not as good on the road, and Hamilton not as good at home. I kind of want to lean towards the under 48.5 with how much pressure is in this game for both teams. So that's, if I can find it. There we go, first half line. Under 24. First half under 24. Boom. The Uncle Rico special. That's what we'll do for that game. Rough Riders, Stampeders. Stampeders minus 3.5 at home, over under 48. Plus 150 on the money line for the Rough Riders. Gross game. I want nothing to do with this game, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. I think Calgary gets the dub, but I want nothing at all to do with this game. No thank you. Third game on the list, Alouettes, Elks. Alouettes -2 on the road. Edmonton, plus 115 on the money line, over under set at 47.5. What I'm going to do here, the Elks are playing with no pressure anymore. This is when they're most dangerous. Give me the Elks straight up, money line plus 115, and give me the over 47, over 47.5 in that game. So my picks are as follows. BC versus Hamilton, under 24 first half. Elks money line and the over 47.5 in the Montreal and Edmonton game. Thank you all. There's one more thing to talk about, though, and that is the X League. We're recapping what happened last week, just game by game. We have the Tokyo Gas versus the Nojima Sajimahira. Tokyo Gas. The Gas boys did it. They done did it. Gas wins 20-13. Gas is not the walking floor mat that they were just a few years ago. This team is actually fine. They are raised above their solo tier that they had been for the last couple years of just absolute garbage. And I respect them. I respect them for it. And then we saw kind of a lot of the same of what we expect. The two best teams, Fujitsu and Panasonic, guess what? They played two not great teams. Fujitsu played the Fukuoka Suns. They won 73-0. That shouldn't surprise you. 73-0. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting performance. Panasonic versus Dentsu. 65-0 Panasonic. Also disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Gross. IBM 31 over the Acai Beer. We had a tie. We had My Deer's tie with the Elecom Kobe Finis. And we had Obic over Acai Beverages 35-16. Again, what does this tell us about the X League? The X League is a 3-team league between Fujitsu, Panasonic, and Obic. And right now, Fujitsu and Panasonic are above the rest. The X League's a weird one. It's a weird one to kind of like parse out just because of there's really just those two levels of teams. There's the three big and then everyone else. It's like the Big Ten. The X League is like the Big Ten of football leagues, where there's three great teams, and then everyone else is just kind of like hungry for the scraps. That's how you need to look at it. So what's coming up, though? The CFL's winding down. We have 19, 20, and 21, and then we're done. The regular season only has 3 weeks left. So absorb it, hold on to it, and embrace it while you can, folks. And hopefully in the next few weeks, when the CFL's done, maybe we'll get some more merger talk. Maybe we'll get some more merger news coming out. Until then, I'm XFL Jim. This has been Spring Fever. Stay hot out there, folks. Bye-bye.